So back to the facts. On January 5th, 2021. So by the way, January 5th, 2021 is the event, the shooting. And this appeal was decided 2 weeks ago. So only a little more than about 2.5 years after the event, we already have an appeal decided. So he's gone through the trial, got convicted, and now he appealed, and his appeal was heard, and the appeal was decided in 2.5 years. That's pretty quick. On January 5th, 2021, Long and Rob, so these are two basically victims in this case, were at a bar with Brittany Fisher. It's amazing how often these cases involve an angry woman, because that's the catalyst for this event, an angry woman. During a verbal argument with Long and Rob, the woman, Fisher, said that she was going to get her baby daddy. So we know it's a high-class joint. Long and Rob knew that Fisher was referring to Poole. Poole, the defendant, the appellant here, a mutual acquaintance. So they were familiar. Shortly thereafter, Long and Rob left the bar. Yeah, I would have left right away, right? Don't stay there so you can get into a fight. Long and Rob left the bar and drove to Rob's house. At some point, Rob stepped outside his house and he found Poole, the appellant, and Fisher, the angry woman, along with 3 or 4 other men. So she brought a whole posse after these dudes because she was angry with them. Along with 3 or 4 other men. Poole and the other men were visibly, it says Ahmed. It's supposed to be armed. That's just a typo. Poole and the other men were visibly armed. So Poole and these other men, because the angry woman induced them to do this, goes to this dude's house armed, visibly armed with guns, as the facts will show. When Rob, the homeowner, told them to leave, Poole asked Rob why Long had put his hands on Fisher. Rob denied that Long had ever touched Fisher. Despite multiple requests from Rob, Poole and the others refused to leave. Eventually, Long, the person accused of inappropriate conduct towards the angry woman, stepped outside, and Poole, the defendant, appellant, accused Long of hitting Fisher with a bottle. You think there would be physical evidence of this? You think there was any physical evidence of this? No. Which Long denied. I never hit her with a bottle. So first it was he put his hands on the angry woman. Now it's he hit the angry woman with a bottle. Is that the kind of story you might hear from an angry woman? Something that appears to be disconnected from reality? Long asked Poole, "Are you here to fight?" And Poole responded by grabbing a black assault rifle from one of the other men and told Long that he would rather take a body, meaning he would rather kill him, kill Long. Feeling threatened, Long retrieved a shotgun from inside the house. All right, well, I don't think that's necessarily an unreasonable thing to do, but if you can get into the house to retrieve a shotgun, why wouldn't you just stay in the house with the shotgun? But he retrieves the shotgun from inside the house. He racks the shotgun to persuade Poole and his friends to leave. And this is just people who watch too many movies. So what? He's got a shotgun, maybe 5 shells in the shotgun, and he just dumped one of them for show when he's facing multiple aggressors, armed. Silly. Anyway, he racked the shotgun to persuade Poole and his friends to leave. Poole then fired 2 shots at Long over Rob's head. Rob told Poole to stop shooting. Yeah, that must have been loud, right? 2 rounds from presumably an AR platform rifle. They're loud, folks, especially when the muzzle's pointed in your direction at near proximity. Let's see. Poole moved around. Let's see. Fired 2 shots at Long over Rob's head. Rob told Poole to stop shooting and tried to push Poole into his car. Long racked the shotgun again. So he dumped another shell? You've just been shot at, dude. And tried to convince Poole to leave. Poole moved around Rob and approached Long before firing 3 or 4 more shots at him. Long was struck once in the stomach, once in each forearm. He dropped the shotgun, ran inside to call an ambulance. Long never fired the shotgun or pointed it at anyone. Poole, the shooter, fled the scene alone in a newer model smoke gray Jeep Cherokee with dark tinted windows. Notice all the detail, folks. This detail is relevant here. They call this the Jeep. When police arrived, Rob told them what had happened and gave a description of the Jeep. About 30 minutes after the shooting, St. Louis County Police Officer Timothy Lally saw a newer model, smoke gray Jeep Cherokee with heavily tinted windows, parked at a gas station. A black male was standing next to the vehicle, pumping gas. The gas station was within 3.5 miles of Rob's house. So what do we have? We have a vehicle that matches the description of the vehicle that fled around the same time frame of the shooting, half an hour later, within reasonable proximity of the shooting. So the officer, who presumably has a report of the shooting and a description of the vehicle, in fact, he says, the officer confirmed the description of the Jeep matched the vehicle he was observing. Now, does it have to be exactly, in fact, the same vehicle? Or is the matching description, the proximity and time and distance to the location of the shooting, sufficient to create reasonable suspicion to justify a stop of the vehicle? Obviously, there's enough here for reasonable suspicion. It's a suspicion based on articulable facts, tying the vehicle to a criminal event. So when the Jeep started to drive away, Officer Lally pulled in behind it and activated his lights and sirens. So what's a normal, inoffensive Jeep do under those circumstances? You pull over, right? You comply with the stop. What did this Jeep do? Well, not that. The Jeep accelerated at a high rate of speed with Officer Lally in pursuit. Officer Lally was driving a fully marked St. Louis County patrol vehicle, so not probably a fake cop. Officer Lally followed the Jeep on city streets at speeds over 100 miles an hour, then continued on the highway at speeds over 120 miles an hour, and Officer Lally terminated his pursuit when he lost visual contact with the Jeep. I suspect that what happened here was there are departmental regulations about how fast you're allowed to pursue. Maybe 120 is the limit, and then you just have to give up the chase. So sufficient distance was created by the Jeep that it escaped. Let's see. At trial, Officer Lally testified he could not positively identify Poole as the driver, nor could he confirm that the vehicle he chased was the Jeep in which Poole fled from the shooting. Of course not, but that's not required for the stop, right? The dash cam video from Officer Lally's patrol car was admitted into evidence. Poole turned himself in after evading arrest for 6 days. Now, notice the word evading here. So this appellate court, and probably the prosecution argued at trial, and the appellate court's looking at the evidence in the light most favorable to the conviction, most consistent with the state's narrative, that Poole wasn't some innocent person who didn't know the police were looking for him for 6 days. He was actively evading arrest for 6 days. Before trial, Poole made an oral motion in limine. So a motion in limine is a request to the court to exclude evidence from the jury. A motion in limine to exclude evidence of the high-speed chase involving Officer Lally. Poole argued that because he was not unequivocally identified as the driver, and the vehicle was not explicitly identified as the same vehicle present at the shooting, the evidence would be highly prejudicial. Well, of course the evidence is prejudicial. I mean, all evidence submitted by a prosecutor is presumptively prejudicial against the defense. That's why the prosecution is admitting it or offering it to the court for admission before the jury. But just because evidence is prejudicial doesn't mean it shouldn't be admitted. You have to balance the relevancy and the probative nature of the evidence against the prejudice. So if it's more prejudicial than probative, and probative means, so relevant means it's rationally associated with the criminal charge. It has something to do with the criminal charge. It's not some unrelated event. Probative means that it's evidence of a nature that would help the jury arrive at a rational conclusion as to some element of the criminal charge. So it adds value to the jury's analysis of the evidence in the light of the criminal charge. So if evidence is more prejudicial than probative, it's more prejudicial than helpful to the jury, then it would be appropriate to exclude it from the jury's consideration. But if it's more probative than prejudicial, then it's appropriate for the jury to consider that in arriving at a verdict. Continuing with the decision, the trial court overruled that motion, so they denied the request to exclude the high-speed chase, reasoning that the evidence of the chase was admissible for the jury's consideration due to the time of day, 30 minutes after the shooting, proximity to the scene, 3.5 miles away, and the fact that Poole left the scene alone in a similar vehicle. Similar is enough. And in fact, it was highly similar, right? Same make, model, color, tinted windows, other characteristics.